Yesterday, President Donald Trump gave his State of the Union address, and much to my surprise, polling data released by CBS and YouGov shows that most of the country approve of what he had to say, and more than half feel that his speech would help unite the country. The reason I find that surprising is because according to polling aggregates, Trump's approval rating and favorability have declined since the government shutdown, so it would seem that according to those polls, the general average and outlook over his job approval, it's at odds with how people felt about his presentation in the State of the Union. Naturally, Democrats didn't like it, but Republicans and independents overwhelmingly approved of what Trump had to say. Many Democrats actually said they weren't even going to watch it, and it's surprising then to learn Stacey Abrams, who gave the rebuttal to the State of the Union, actually didn't watch his speech. You'd imagine that somebody rebutting somebody else would listen to what they have to say, but she didn't. So today, let's take a look at the approval ratings and the polls coming out about the State of the Union, take a look at some criticism of the Democrats, and then I want to look at Trump's overall approval rating. But before we get started, make sure you follow me on Minds at minds.com/Timcast, because we are rolling out our community and distributed newsroom, and I need your help to get involved to help us build it out. And if you want to support these videos, all you have to do is share them to help spread the message. From CBS News, the headline, most viewers approved of Trump's second State of the Union address. The first number they give us, 76% of Americans who tuned in to President Trump's State of the Union address Tuesday night approved of the speech he gave. Just 24% disapproved. As is often the case in State of the Union addresses, the people who watched tonight's speech leaned more towards the president's own party, at least compared to Americans overall. In the latest CBS national poll released last month, 25% of Americans identified themselves as Republican. Among those who watched Tuesday night's address, that figure was 43%, and Republicans helped bolster the overall approval of the address. The second bit of data we can see is that Republicans were 43% of those who watched, Democrats only 24%, and independents were 30%. They say, and while 97% of Republicans approved of the speech, far fewer Democrats who tuned in did, 30%. Most independents did approve, and this may be the most important bit of data I think we should look at. Take a look at these numbers. Republicans at 97% approval for Donald Trump's speech. That seems obvious. It's his party. He's talking about things they want to do. He's touting their talking points and their successes. Democrats are very obviously at odds with Trump's agenda, so that's not surprising to see 30%. But among independents, this is actually surprising to me. 82% of independents are in favor of Trump's speech. They approve of it. This can tell us something very important about where independents are at. You need the independent voters to win in 2020 and to win in the long run. And right now, they overwhelmingly like what Trump had to say. The story continues. 56% of Americans who watched tonight feel the president's speech will do more to unite the country rather than divide it. Although 36% don't think it will change things much. Democrats who watched the speech see things differently, however. Just 15% of Democrats think the president's speech will unite the country. I would have to estimate, if the Democrats overwhelmingly think it wouldn't, they'd be wrong. Because when we look at the speech watchers in general, 56% feel it will unite the country. That's more than half of the people watching, which would mean it's going to at least unite these people to an extent, or not change things at all, 36%. These are the more important numbers, because not changing anything isn't necessarily positive or negative. Uniting is positive. We can see that the negative view of the speech was only 8%. That would mean even people who disapprove of what Trump had to say still felt it would either unite the country or not do anything at all. I would imagine if they disapproved of his speech, they might lean more towards it not changing a damn thing. But that's still not negative necessarily. But it does continue on bipartisanship. Just a third said that what they heard in the speech made them think Mr. Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will work together more going forward. 63% said there wouldn't be much change. I don't think this has to do anything with Trump's speech. The likelihood that Trump and Pelosi will work together, regardless of the speech, is probably not very good, and we can see that reflected in how people feel about things. On some of the specific issues the president touched upon, most viewers had favorable opinions of what Mr. Trump had to say about immigration and what to do about U.S. troops in the Middle East. This is amazing. 72% favored what Donald Trump had to say when dealing with immigration, and 74% when dealing with the Middle East. But it gets even more interesting. From what they heard tonight, 71% of speech watchers think there is a crisis at the southern border. Democrats who watched do not. Among speech watchers, 71% felt there was a crisis at the southern border. This data is showing us that overwhelmingly people who watched the speech agreed with Trump. Now keep in mind, 43% were Republicans, so that is to be expected, but he is reaching out to the independents who it would seem that are agreeing with him for the most part. The last bit of data they have is on North Korea, saying 70% of speech watchers think a second meeting between Mr. Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is a good idea. Republicans are particularly likely to think it's a good idea. Most Democrats, 57%, don't think it is, but 43% do. And that's interesting. Why would that be a bad idea? Peace talks are always a good idea, aren't they? I think it's fair to point out there's quite a bit of tribalism going on. Democrats obviously aren't going to agree with Trump for a few reasons. One, I think tribalism plays a huge role in this, but I think people are Democrats because they're interested in certain ideas and certain talking points, and Trump is more effectively communicating Republican talking points. So naturally, you're going to have different factors playing against Trump as it pertains to the left. But if he's able to bring in independents and Republicans into supporting what he has to say, I can only imagine that in the coming days, with new polls coming out, his approval rating will likely go up. And this would contrast what we just saw, because since the government shutdown, it hasn't been going too well for Trump. His disapproval has gone up quite a bit. Right now, you can see that his approval rating has gone down, his disapproval has gone up. However, in terms of his favorability, though, it hasn't changed all that much. In fact, it looks like people have warmed up to him a little bit even before the State of the Union. I can only imagine his approval and favorability are going to go up following this speech when you consider YouGov shows most people liked what he had to say. One of the more notable moments that I wanted to highlight, because there is a bit of criticism here, is when Trump gave a shout out to the women of Congress. From CNN, they say, several Democratic female lawmakers cheered President Donald Trump for celebrating the amount of women serving in Congress in an unexpected moment that led to chants of USA on the House floor. The moment came just after the Democratic caucus erupted in cheers at Trump touting growth in female employment numbers. Female Democratic lawmakers were seen pointing to themselves, and the Democrats in the chamber turned toward the newly elected members of Congress to cheer them as a symbol of this female job growth. No one has benefited more from our thriving economy than women, who have filled 58% of the newly created jobs last year, Trump said. Several female lawmakers, many dressed in the white of the suffragettes as a symbol of solidarity, began to stand up and applaud, including Democratic freshmen reps Elisa Slotkin, Chrissy Houlihan, Mary Gay Scanlon, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You weren't supposed to do that, Trump joked, as Democratic reps Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib smiled and clapped. All Americans can be proud that we have more women in the workforce than ever before, Trump said to more bipartisan applause. Trump also directly addressed the record-breaking number of women, mostly Democrats, who were elected in November's midterm election. Don't sit yet, you're going to like this. And exactly 1 century after Congress passed the constitutional amendment giving women the right to vote, we also have more women serving in Congress than any time before, pointing and smiling at the large group of female Democratic representatives who began their own chant of USA. Many Trump supporters said Trump has effectively turned the State of the Union into a Trump rally. And I think it's important to point out the Democratic women standing up and chanting USA in response to a statement made by Trump was surprising to me, because the Democrats, for the most part, weren't cheering at everything. I mean, they did stand up and cheer. There were a lot of instances where everyone stood up and applauded what the president had to say. Mostly it was Republicans, however. What's surprising to me is that they would cheer for anything Trump had to say. But this brings up another good point. I have been to many Trump rallies. I have heard what people cheer for at Trump rallies, and I'm often surprised that so many people hate what the president has to say when sometimes he says things like this. Trump said something that got newly elected progressive women to clap and cheer and chant USA. And that's something similar to what he does at his rallies. But here's the issue. Many Democrats said they weren't going to watch his presentation, and that's probably why they don't know he says things they might like. Think about that. To all the Democrats who didn't watch the State of the Union, they wouldn't hear him praise the women of Congress and then see the women chant USA back at Trump, essentially in agreement. In fact, Stacey Abrams, who gave the rebuttal, it's reported didn't actually watch what he had to say. From the Washington Examiner, Stacey Abrams didn't watch State of the Union address before delivering Democratic rebuttal. Now, I will point out it's fair in that they have to write the rebuttal, they have to prepare the speech, and they might not know what Trump is going to say. But I still think it would be important to watch. The story says, Stacey Abrams did not watch President Trump's State of the Union address before delivering her rebuttal, according to a new report. A source told CNN, that Abrams, who was the first black woman to deliver the rebuttal to the president's annual address, decided to focus the Democratic rebuttal on Trump administration policies rather than the specifics of his Tuesday night speech. We have this tweet from Jake Tapper who said, "Source close to Stacey Abrams says she didn't watch the president's speech, and indeed she focused on his policies, not his words tonight. Source also says Abrams wrote the speech herself." Now, as for what I think about the State of the Union, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10. I felt there were a few instances where I groaned and rolled my eyes. When Trump called out how we need to end partisan investigations, I let out a big laugh. Some of the things Trump said were just so overtly pro-Trump, personally, that I thought it was funny he would bring that up, and I will criticize him for that. He shouldn't have done it. However, for the most part, I think he brought up a bunch of interesting issues, and I'd probably lean towards where the majority of the country leans. Hopefully it will unite the country, but I'm going to lean more towards no, it won't. I think tribalism is the biggest issue in how people decide what they're going to do, whether or not they're going to agree with Trump is simply based on, is Orange Man bad or not? So we'll see what happens. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and we will keep the conversation going. How do you feel about the State of the Union? I imagine many people in this space on YouTube are going to overwhelmingly like what he had to say, but I think we got to be fair. We got to call out Trump on the things that he does that are bad, while still recognizing that he does things that are good, and I think that's what it's all about. So for me, I have no problem pointing out that some of the things he said were so overtly about him that he needs to be criticized for it. But you comment, let me know what you think, and we'll keep the conversation going. You can follow me on Minds at Timcast. Stay tuned to new videos every day at 4 p.m., and I'll have more videos on my main channel, youtube.com/TimcastNews at 6 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.